items on the agenda, the live stream will cease prior to the meeting moving into private. There might be a short delay. A recording of the public part of the meeting will be 24 hours of the meeting. Attendees are required to wear masks on entry to the building and meeting room, but may remove them when seated. And would members and officers please remember to switch microphones on when speaking and speaking directly into them, and switch off when finished. Any officers that called upon by the portfolio holders should address the executive using the microphones marked presenting officers at the rear of the council chamber. And can I remind everyone to switch off your mobile phones or place them on silent. And we welcome the members of the public in this meeting here today, but there will be a private part of the meeting. At that point, we will ask you to leave. So thank you so much. Apologies for absence. I have Khadija, Hazel, and Fatma. Publish records of the meeting. Do you agree with them and you're okay for me to sign? Thank you. Any members affected by Section 106? Any disclosures of interest?
Can I disclose an interest in the item on the Queen Elizabeth School? My daughter works there, so it's a non-pecuniary interest.
No, thank you for that, Sean. There's only one exception item, which is London and Luton governance structure, which I will cover when I come to it. And yeah, that is mine. So colleagues, I'm tabling this report in leader's absence as it is a simple but positive report that seeks to further strengthen governance of our airport company. The airport is continuing to bounce back from the catastrophic impacts of the pandemic, and I'm delighted to be able to share with you that passenger numbers are now back up to 79.4% of pre-pandemic levels for June. The report has 4 recommendations that I would ask you to support. The report was positively received by the Luton shareholders group. Are we all in support of the recommendations? Thank you. Thank you. Right, okay, references for committees and other bodies. Do we have any? I don't have none.
None, Chair.
Recommendations from scrutiny?
None, Chair.
No. Any petitions?
Chair.
Right, coming on to children's and family and education, I have that report to move, and this report is about development of sixth form provision at Queen Elizabeth School from September 2023. Executive is recommended to approve the extension of the age range of Queen Elizabeth School to include a sixth form from September 2023 as set out in the statutory proposal published on the 20th of April of 2022, and you can see that in Appendix A. Following a consultation, the governing body of Queen Elizabeth School published a statutory proposal to extend school's age range to develop a sixth form, and there were no objections received. The development of additional sixth form provision in Luton will assist with meeting increased demand alongside small-scale expansion of Luton Sixth Form College. The proposal will also ensure that pupils in the east of the town have the option of attending a school sixth form to their local home, to their locality. And following the consultation, the governing body has reduced the school's published admission numbers from 270 to 240 from September 2023 to propose underutilized existing accommodations for sixth form provision, and this approach is consistent with the following. Year 7 intake are projected to peak in September 2022 and decline thereafter. The school is currently undersubscribed in year 7 to 10, and large cohorts of pupils are entering post-16 education. So really positive and straightforward report, and I would ask members to support. Are we in support of this proposal? Thank you very much. Moving on to provision of revenue and capital outturn, and that would be Rob.
Okay, what you have in front of you this evening is the provisional revenue and capital outturn for 21-22. I'm going to go summarise the document that you have in front of you. So we'll go do the general fund summary first. This report sets out the provisional financial outturn position for 21-22, subject to the audit of the accounts. The past financial year remained very challenging as we continue to manage the impacts of coronavirus alongside maintaining core services delivery and delivering the budget savings programme required to keep the finances sustainable. The final position for the Council's finances in 21-22 is an intricate mix of impact from coronavirus, some significant demand pressures across a number of services, updated grant funding from government, and further progress with the savings programme. After the initial indications of a potential overspend position at Q1 and Q2, recovery measures continued over the second half of the year with compensating reductions in costs and improved position on income reported, supported by securing further projects from the savings programme and by the receipts of some additional grant funding, resulting in net forecast underspend of 0.5 million for the year at the Q3 monitoring, before use of the general contingency budget. I'm pleased to report that the final position for the year confirms that we've remained within the budget set for the year and that a further improvement has been achieved over the final quarter of the year, resulting in a net underspend of around 5 million, which represents a variation of approximately 1.3% of the gross general fund costs. The underspend includes a significant reduction in borrowing costs achieved for the year and the proportion of the general coronavirus grant not used to meet the cost or income losses in 21-22. These will be carried forward for the ongoing impacts in 22-23. The outturn position has allowed for some provision to be made at this close to meet some exceptional one-off costs faced by the Council. The unavoidable costs on audit fees, the airport planning inquiry and street lighting as detailed on paragraph 16 of the report, and capacity to set aside some funding in reserves to help meet the significant financial challenges lie ahead. No further grant support is expected from the government to help local authorities meet the ongoing impacts resulting from the pandemic. We still, from the fees and charges, we've not returned to pre-pandemic levels as yet from the fees and charges that we charge through the council. And the government has also announced that no additional funding will be forthcoming to help mitigate the exceptional and acute rise in cost inflation, which is significantly higher than allowed for in the 22-23 budget. To help meet these further challenges, £2.5 million has been set aside in reserves as risk cover for ongoing impacts from coronavirus on the council's cost or income, representing deferred use of part of the 6.6 million general COVID support grant that we received in 21-22. A further 2.5 million has been placed in reserves and committed towards the increase in cost inflation that will hit the council in 22-23, sourced from the short-term reduction borrowing costs achieved in 21-22, which is paragraph 17 in the report. 1.3 million of the coronavirus grant funding received in 21-22 for specific countermeasures and other support to the community has also been placed in reserves and committed for continuing with this work in the current year. Appendix F shows the 4 grants detailed in the COVID-19 emergency funding reserve selection. The final position achieved in 21-22 was also assisted by delivery of some further budget savings projects from the overall programme included in the budget, releasing the contingency cover temporarily held to phase in delivery. Around about 3 million of contingency was released. Contingency cover for the savings has been discontinued at the 22-23 budget, with the remaining savings projects scheduled for delivery through to March 24. The outlook for the general fund, it is important to recognise that the council's finances over the past 2 years have faced unprecedented upheaval and continuous change, including significant additional but temporary grant support relating to the pandemic. As we move into the recovery period, the council's budget prospects remain difficult, with a number of significant ongoing pressures, which include no further grant support expected for any ongoing impact from coronavirus, 8 million of savings needed to be delivered over the next 2 years with no specific contingency cover. Demand levels on several core services continue to exceed the affordable budget. The early estimate of 7 million pressures in 22-23, which you can see at table paragraph 11 of the report. Price inflation is at exceptional levels and will significantly affect the cost of providing services. No additional grant is support expected from the government for this. And if you look at paragraph 12 of the report, the early estimate range of 2.7 million to 7.3 million inflation above what is provided for in the 22-23 budget. Expected workforce pay pressures given the current cost of living. It's worth saying at this point, before I move any further, that Luton are not isolated in this issue. This is a pressure for all the councils in the United Kingdom. As we talk today, they will be facing these same pressures. The provision made from the 21-22 outturn position will help to mitigate some of this risk, but it will not be enough to offset the full extent of the expected pressures. Demand management and other recovery measures will therefore need to continue in 22-23 for those services where spend is exceeding the available budget, and timely delivery of the full budget saving programme remains vital to the long-term sustainability of the budget. Rigorous monitoring will continue over the 22-23 and updates will be provided to the executive in due course. I'm going to move on now to the wider revenue accounts, dealing with the housing revenue account. The housing revenue account has a small net underspend of 0.3 million compared to budget, which is a variation of approximately 0.8% of the gross cost, resulting in a final contribution of 3.2 million to HRA reserves for 21-22. The underspend primarily results from reduced staff vacancy savings, repair costs, including lockdown restrictions, and additional rental income, offset by the increased cost of communal lighting. The HRA reserves are needed for risk cover and on annual revenue spend and for contributions to capital spend on improvements and additions to the housing stock. The school budget has a net underspend of around 0.2 million compared to budget, a variation of approximately 0.2% of the gross costs. And this comprises of an underspend of 1 million in the central schools budget, primarily due to staff vacancy savings and low alternative tuition costs, offset by a 0.7 million cumulative overspend across the devolved schools budget. For capital expenditure, 144 million was invested in new assets and improved infrastructure during 21-22. This is a net reduction of 49 million, 25% compared to the planned programme for 21-22, comprising of 65 million of spend rephased to 22-23, due primarily to delays resulting from coronavirus restrictions, materials and labour supply issues, and reduced in-year investment in the council's subsidiary companies, offset by 16 million of increased spend in 21-22 from project delivery advance from future years or from additional funding becoming available. I recommend the 21-22 provisional outturn report to the executive. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? David?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just think it's worth pointing out the position as it was seen when this report went to Finance Review Group. I think the general consensus was that with 6.9 million estimated impact on the current year's budget, and that likely to continue in the future years, subject to the savings that you're able to produce between now and March next year, it's just a general recognition that you've got a tough task and it's not going to get any easier. That's all.
Thank you, David, and I concur, and I just want to appreciate all the hard work from the members and officers in these very difficult financial times and putting all the contingencies in place for a balanced budget.
I don't know whether Rob could have a look at a relook at BTS's contributions to the council, because BTS has had an 11% increase on its materials in the last 3-4 months, and that 11% is bound to eat into BTS's profit, which will eat into the contribution to the council. We can't have it both ways. Expect them to give us a contribution, expect them to do more work, and be it with the increase in costs on materials as well. But one of the main ones, the government's white paper what's going through Parliament at the moment is going to end up putting more pressure on us through homeless people, where there's no longer Section 21 notices or Section 20 notices have to be served. We're going to have to pick them up. Landlords are leaving the private rented sector in droves at the moment, and you just see by the amount of properties we're losing. I don't think they've got enough in there for emergency housing grant. Can we have a relook at that when we know what the results of the people leaving the private sector are?
Come back on that.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to look at that.
Cheers.
Councillor, thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? And is that accepted? Report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Today's report before you sets out plans for the delivery of additional enforcement measures in relation to 200 million growth funding that was agreed at full council on 21st February 2022. The report sets out the proposed plan, which looks to support the ongoing work within to tackle antisocial behaviour in Luton Town Centre, being undertaken by a range of services. The report sets out the measures in full detail, but in brief, these are around increasing the number of visible patrolling resources to aid in the prevention and detection of crime and antisocial behaviour, but also to improve the feelings of public safety. The second measure will be to recruit an additional antisocial behaviour case management officer who will case manage repeat and priority perpetrators and will work alongside existing partners and provide a problem-solving approach to issues. Further to this, they will also look to manage and provide support to priority victims of antisocial behaviour in the town centre. The final measure will be to create a problem-solving fund to accompany the above additional resources. This will allow for location-based interventions such as target hardening, awareness campaigns, and out-of-hours operational activity. Whilst the report sets out plans for future enforcement and problem-solving approaches, these measures will be integrated with and will seek to strengthen the overall approach to tackling antisocial behaviour in the town centre, including engagement, education, and working towards prevention. The overall goals associated to the plans are set out within the report under paragraph 6, and these additional enforcement measures will contribute to the overall priorities within that objective framework. I recommend that Executive agree to the future plans as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Maria. Just a point of clarification, is the 200,000 additional resource that we put in, not 2 million. So, Tom?
Just ask Maria to ensure. I think there's been a complete failure by the council to take people to court. The fly tipping crews have caught the people. They gathered the evidence. We've got hundreds of cases waiting to go to court. Down in Decorum in Bedford, they seem to be able to do it quicker than us. I hope some of this money can go to ensuring the people that don't pay on the spot fines are in court quickly, because it seems we're slower than any other council around us to do it.
I suppose you'd be happy to look at that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, more feedback from scrutiny when this went to overview and scrutiny board. The board were unanimously supportive of what you're trying to do, but there were very strong feelings expressed that it won't actually work unless there is a significant increase in, first of all, enforcement of the begging and drink laws, and secondly, a significant uplift in the efforts to encourage the people who are antisocially behaving to get involved with the help that's available to them to try and put their lives back together. Without both of those significant increases, then sadly the feeling was it won't work, but very supportive of what you're trying to do.
Okay. You're accepting of those recommendations?
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I welcome this wholeheartedly because the town centre is a no-go zone for a lot of people. The only question yesterday, quite rightly, I was questioned by somebody that we collect a precept for the police as part of everything. what role will the police do? Because obviously the begging alone can't be tackled by us as neighbourhood enforcement. Have we got any buy-in from the police to give us some additional resource? Because obviously there's the ones who are drug and alcohol who need help and support, but there's also the professional beggars that are coming into our town, which are making people's lives hell. So do we have any buy-in and support from the police? My question.
Yes, we do, and I refer to Sarah to take that.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. This is absolutely a combined effort. The police, actually, Chief Inspector Jamie Langworth is online, demonstrating his support for what we're trying to achieve as a partnership.
Thank you. And I was aware of, and that's why I'm making sure that Jamie is aware that we will be looking for support.
Just a comment from me, and these are very important points, and we have to work in collaboration. We have to now come to a point. We have to take this very seriously. We've got our town master plan. We're investing £20 million in the stage program, and unless we get our act together, all the investment might be meaningless, because with the investment, we want to bring people in. And if we have begging and antisocial behavior, which is driving people out, so we would expect all the partners within our collaboration to step up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't know if I missed it there, but do we have a collaboration with stakeholders such as NOAA, Key Stage and Signpost? Because they have communication and relationships with a lot of these people. Do we have that collaboration?
Absolutely. So this report focuses on our enforcement response, but we recognise there is an awful lot of work that needs to go on with the individuals concerned. That enforcement is really just one very small action that we can take to help in terms of deterrent and dealing with persistent offenders. So we've got officers here who deal with all of the voluntary sector, our drug and alcohol partners, because actually we understand that what we're trying to do is change people's behaviours, change people's dealing with people who are in very difficult positions in their lives, and help them to get out of that and change their lifestyle and their way of behaving. So enforcement, although we're focused on it tonight, enforcement is one element, but actually there's an awful lot of work we need to do across all the partners in the voluntary sector to make sure that we're successful in terms of turning people's lives around and away from these activities.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other comments or questions? No? We accept the report. Thank you. Moving on. And that's you, Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Aslam. Hopefully this will be quite an easy one for people. It's a good news story, because I'm going to ask the executive to approve Luton Council signing up to the Good Business Charter. And to tell you a little bit about that, and I'm sure you've all read the report, but just to give you a brief summary of it. So the Good Business Charter is an accreditation that organisations in the UK can sign up for, and basically looking at responsible business practices and making sure that businesses are doing things in a fair and responsible way. And they look at components such as the real living wage, whether employees have fair hours and contracts, looks at employee well-being, employee representation, very important, diversity and inclusion, environmental responsibility, paying fair tax, commitment to customers, ethical sourcing and prompt payment. So there's quite a lot that they're looking at. Really want to see that businesses are doing the things that they should be doing. And the Good Business Charter is an initiative of an organisation called the Good Business Foundation, which is a charity in England and Wales. You'll be pleased to know that both the CBI and the TUC have representatives on the board of that charity. So I think that's a good thing for us, because we know that both employers and employees' voices are then heard. And there are other alternatives that we could use, but we actually think the Good Business Charter model is one that will work best for us. It's nationally recognised, and it looks at the key issues without stopping any kinds of businesses from being involved. And quite importantly, it doesn't cost us a lot in resources to actually achieve that accreditation. So some organisations, some authorities have already gone down this road, not too many. So York became the first local authority to sign up for the charter. and they've also now been classed as a good business charter city. Sorry, there's lots of like little titles in this one. And the reason they got that was because they joined up with other anchors and key businesses in the town. And then Kingston upon Thames recently became the second local authority, but they haven't got a good business charter town accreditation yet because they haven't joined up with their anchor organisations and other businesses. So I think it would be fabulous, officers certainly think it'd be fabulous, for Luton to be the first good business charter town in the UK. And we've already had meetings with all the good business charter people, officers across the council in all the departments you would imagine have been involved in those meetings. And we've also been going out and talking to businesses and saying to them, you know, what do you think about this idea? And I'm really pleased to tell you that Luton Town Football Club, Active Luton, Luton Culture Trust, Luton Business Improvement District, Bedfordshire Chamber of Commerce and EcoStyle are all currently working towards obtaining the standard required for the Good Business Charter. And they're really keen to support us in becoming that first in the UK Good Business Charter town. And I think that's really important because they're showcasing the town as excellent employers and they're helping to encourage other businesses to come on board as well. One of the final things to say is that it's also aligned with our 2040 vision, and I think that's really important for us as well. We know that the role that local businesses can play locally, we know that that's really important. And the final thing is that there is no cost to signing up for the Good Business Charter other than our good officers' time, which I think is actually money well spent. There is a fee of £500 the following year, second year after application, but not in the first year. And I hope members can support it because I think it's a really important initiative.
Thank you, Shani. It would be great to become the first town to receive this. So yeah, good work. Javid?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I wholeheartedly support this, and I think it's a long overdue, and I'm very keen to see it, very keen that we implement this, and very pleased to see it arrive at executive for sign off.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Javid. It's fully support what we're trying to do here. I just have one comment or question, if I may, is do we have the L&D on board yet? You know,
not yet.
Yeah.
One of the ones we could talk.
Yeah, the Luton and Dunstable Hospital.
Are they on board?
The reason I asked that is because a couple of years ago, I think we all know we had issues around the domestic staff there not being paid the real living wage, and they had different benefits to the rest of the staff because it was trade union pressure and the pressure from the Labour group here as well that managed to change their minds.
Yeah.
So if they can come onto this charter, that obviously will protect hopefully staff in the future.
We've had our first meeting with them last week with regards to them moving that forwards, and they've also met with the chief executive of the Good Business Foundation to see how they can move forwards.
What timelines are we looking at to be credited? Timelines?
I will be able to, if it's signed off here today, I will be able to put that application in tomorrow, and it'll be looking at a fortnight.
David?
Yeah, apologies from me, Chair, but the temptation's just too great for me to resist. The first local authority to sign up for this, York City Council, of course, is controlled by Liberal Democrats with Green support. And the second local authority, Kingston on Thames, is also Liberal Democrat run local authority. So, yeah, sure, we support what you're trying to do here.
Thank you, David.
We will be the first Labour-controlled council.
Okay, so I think that report is accepted. Yeah, agreement. Thank you. As Fatima is away, Rob will be presenting the moving traffic contraventions report.
Thank you, Chair. The executive will recall that on the 4th of April 2022, we approved the adoption of powers to monitor and enforce moving traffic contraventions under the Traffic Management Act 2004, subject to approval from Department for Transport. Today's report before you is to update the executive on the outcome of the consultation that took place between the 21st of February and the 4th of April 2022 in relation to the adoption of those powers. Its purpose is to ensure that the executive can consider the outcome of the consultation which took place and to ratify the decision taken on the 4th of April to adopt the powers in light of the consultation outcomes as outlined in the report. The report details the consultation that took place, which sought views from the local community on whether they consider it was a good idea for the councils to adopt the powers. In addition, it also set out the rationale for 2 trial locations that were selected, Manchester Street and Jewel Street, pedestrian zones in the town centre. In response to the consultation, a total of 45 responses were received, of which 55% felt it was a good idea to adopt the powers, with 40% of people saying that they did not consider it a good idea. There were 2 main grounds for opposing adoption, which were, firstly, it's a money-making scheme. Secondly, no safety rationale for implementing the powers. Point 10 of the report explains that in line with the guidance, the council will issue warning notices to first-time offenders, with penalty charges notices being issued only when the contravention is repeated for a period of time. It also outlines the purpose of introducing these powers is to contribute towards road safety and traffic management. The report and the attached appendices are outlined for colleagues in more detail the full outcome of the consultation. I recommend that the executive agree to the recommendations in this report. Thank you.
Rob, any questions? No? Oh, Javed?
Yeah, just a comment back to the feedback of the 40. Obviously, I fully support this. The person that said it's a money-making scheme, don't do the crime, don't pay the crime, don't pay the fine. So that's a simple answer for that person, or that cohort of people who say it's a money-making. It's not money-making. If you don't do the crime, you won't pay the fine.
Any other comments or questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the money-making scheme and since I was highways portfolio holder, it was came quite obvious to me that people in Luton love their cars. And that mindset also comes into about money-making schemes as well. And it just also, for future reference, this shows you the massive change we're going to have, modal shift we're going to have to do in the future, because it's going to be massive. And I've met people who said that, and it's because they also, they want to be in their cars, they want to be driving, which is not a problem. It's just that we need to look at how we push that shift over. So I'm just moving that forward, really, in relation to the modal shift for climate change. Thank you.
Paul? Yeah. Right, moving on to adult commissioning spot procurement. That's you, Javed.
Thank you, Chair. So the paper is in front of you. The executive is requested to ratify the 138 adult social care spot placement contracts covering a total of 783 clients as valid, notwithstanding the irregularity of the procurement process. And the placement were made without the following procedures and standing orders. Now, as part of the council's internal audit procurement review and undertook a review of the processes, we found there was a lack of formal contracts and some procurement breaches. Now, since then, the current position is as a result of the weakness in the council procurement contract management arrangements identified, in order to and the internal audit procurement reviews and consider we were providing conclusion of the council's value for money arrangements. These weaknesses are broader than the adult social care, and as part of the response to internal audit recommendation, the adult commission under revised review of contracts. This work is now being undertaken. The service intends to complete the process of having contracts and individual agreement placement by 30th September 2002. So we'd just like the executive to ratify the contracts.
No, we accept the report. You're going to be moving into private, so.
Clay.
Hi, it's because of the section included around that discusses opportunities for acquisitions that included some financial information that I considered was commercially sensitive.
Claire?
Yeah, I mean, the report is more of an in principle decision with an example of the kinds of schemes that we're looking at. It's not actually making any financial decisions on any particular option at the moment. So it was more there to give members a feel for the kinds of, the kinds of acquisition opportunities there that we had conversations about. And I wanted the opportunity to be open about those in specific. And that's why I
Okay.
took a view about that.
This can